The Atlantic tropics are very active, as is the Eastern Pacific, as well as the Central Pacific. We have a couple of hurricanes out there, a couple of very dangerous hurricanes out there, and the U.S. is under threat. Taking a look out at the entire half of the globe, we have from left to right Hurricane Madeline, which is a Category 2 hurricane now, had been up to a Category 4, but it's headed very, very close to the Big Island. We have Hurricane Lester behind Madeline, which is back up to a Category 4. You can see how the eye's gotten better defined. That could be headed a little to the north of the island, but it is threatening. We have a tropical depression, which we've tracked as an invest all through the Atlantic basin, looking better than ever. It's on the edge of becoming a tropical storm. If and when it does, it'll be named Hermine. We have another tropical depression that's not even discernible here off of North Carolina, which should become another tropical storm and move out to sea. That one would be Ian. And then, of course, this big donut out here is a very dangerous major hurricane, Gaston. Thankfully, not heading towards any land, although watch it if you're in the Azores. Now, let's get straight to it, which is kind of easy to do. Tropical Depression 9, that's the biggest threat. As of 11 p.m., it was at 24.3 north, 87.8 west. Winds were still 35, but it's nearing tropical storm strength based upon the satellite getting much better organized. Pressure 1004. You can see it's expected to slowly move north, northeast, and then eventually turn northeast and be close to hurricane strength, potentially a hurricane, by the time it gets to the state of Florida, which is exactly why we have a hurricane watch out all the way from Anclote Key all the way down to the Indian Pass, just because of the threat that this does actually become a hurricane prior to landfall. You can see the computer models there pretty much all taking it towards the Big Bend or the Florida Panhandle. The west coast of Florida, especially if it comes in lopsided, can be dealt with a lot of heavy rain as this system comes in. You can see it on the infrared satellite imagery looking better than ever. It's got very deep convection, firing right near where the center is, and finally the shear has begun to lessen around it. It was getting pounded with northerly shear. It's had a problem with that ever since it was near Puerto Rico, but finally it's starting to look a bit better organized, and as a matter of fact, when we actually take a look at the shear values chart, you can see how the shear is now getting much more favorable over the top of it, and that should allow it to get at least close to hurricane strength prior to making landfall. You can see Hurricane Gaston, too. The reason it's blown up, it had a safe harbor of low wind shear out here, which allowed it to strengthen. We'll talk about Gaston in just a minute. Now, we did want to touch on our threat with TD9, which again is expected to become Tropical Storm Hermine, or even Hurricane Hermine, rainfall. Look at these rainfall estimates all the way up the eastern seaboard, and thankfully it's not in Louisiana. We saw what happened with the flooding in Louisiana, but still very heavy rain predicted by the National Weather Service, and who knows if the system intensifies, if that rain might get even heavier. So we're really going to have to keep an eye on that one as it continues to get better organized. Not a tropical storm yet, but it's getting pretty darn close. TD8 is at 34.5, 74.6. Wind still 35. Is moving northeast at 4, kind of the exact opposite direction as our depression in the Gulf. Pressure way up at about 1,011 millibars. It is expected to still become a tropical storm as it moves on out, but it does not look good at all. That's actually not our tropical depression at all. That's our tropical depression in the Gulf. Where's our depression off the East Coast? There it is. You can see quite a difference. Not very well organized at all. You can see a little bit of thunderstorms firing up there as the nighttime comes. Clearly going to get jettisoned on off to the northeast through the North Atlantic. We're not going to have to deal with it, but you could see the storms coming over Florida as our depression builds in the Gulf of Mexico. A little bit foreboding. Nasty weather tomorrow, no doubt, in the state of Florida. Then we go further out, and here's Gaston, back up to 120 mile per hour major hurricane gusting as high as 150, and you can see on the satellite imagery here, Gaston is just a donut, a monster. It's a very well organized hurricane. You can see it's about to start weakening as it pulls off towards the northeast, but look at that eye. Very, very dangerous. If this was over South Florida right now, for example, you would not want to be there. You'd want to be evacuated. This is a very dangerous major hurricane, and the first major hurricane of the season. although we might still have another, at least one or two more. We are still not even in September yet. We're getting there, but we're not there yet. So again, Gaston looking very impressive there as it continues to move on off in the general direction of the Azores, so keep an eye on it there. Now in the eastern Pacific, Hawaii is under the threat of two potential hurricanes. This is Hurricane Madeline. Winds are down now to 110, had been up at about 135, 140 mile per hour Category 4, but it's weakened over the last 24 hours, moving straight west at 10. And what you want to see is a southwest component to its track, which is predicted, but it is expected to be a hurricane through Thursday night as it moves just south of the Big Island, but they are in the cone. And so this is why if you're in the island of Hawaii, if you're in the Big Island, you have to watch it very carefully because it is a dangerous hurricane. And we do have a hurricane watch out for the Big Island and tropical storm watch further north because it should get close enough to scrape by. And then after Madeline moves through, we have Lester, which is back up to a Category 4. I had a feeling it had been down to a Cat 3, but it looked pretty darn good on satellite. That also moving straight to the west, but it's expected to eventually kind of dance to the north. And you can see there on the satellite imagery, there's Madeline, looking like it's getting sheared a little bit. You can see this is kind of a defensive barrier that the hurricane put up to try and block the shear, and it's affecting the inner core, but nonetheless still headed in the general direction straight west towards the coastline of the Big Island there. And even if it moves just to the south, it's going to be a really close call. Really close call. A small hurricane, but still a potent little thing. And then here comes another small hurricane, but a much more dangerous hurricane, Lester. And just be thankful that Lester's predicted to move as far north as it is, because if it was bending like that, you would be dealing with another potential landfall threat, although you are not out of the woods yet if you live in Hawaii. So sorry I kind of rushed through it. We had so much to cover, I wanted to make sure I got everything in. But again, dealing with multiple systems there, taking a look once again, you can see we have Madeline and Lester in the Pacific, threatening the state of Hawaii. Madeline 110, Lester 140. We have another interesting feature here brewing off Mexico. We'll see if anything comes of that. And then, of course, we have what could be a hurricane for Florida, a depression expected to become a storm for out to sea, to join our major hurricane, Gaston, which is spinning out there looking quite impressive, even from this global world view. A very impressive tropical basin right now in the Pacific and the Atlantic, and it's not over yet. Another wave off Africa and one about to leave, and we will continue to monitor those situations as we move further into September and the peak of the hurricane season. I'm Mike Naso. I'll see you guys next time.